Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to, I don't know what I want to call this. I guess this will be a source material extra. So joining me this evening is none other than Mr. Pat Mullin. How you doing this evening?
Jesse, I am ecstatic to be here on the eve of the birthday of the United States of America.
That's right, man. July 3rd going into July 4th. July 4th is right around the corner. That's tomorrow. So this evening, I tagged you in here, Pat, to sit down with me, and we're going to do a little something. I'm just going to go ahead and hit play because I think we've got quite a bit of it's kind of like before we even get into the game, they play some of the interviews that are on this Sega, this CD, things like that. But just real quick to let everybody know what we're talking about. We're going to be talking about Prime. I don't know if it's called Ultraverse Prime or if it's just called Prime. The YouTube link that I have here, this comes from Mega CD Long Play 36. So they probably have a lot of stuff under their belt, but they have it titled as Ultraverse Prime. Now this came out for the Sega CD, I think in 1994. We are going to jump right in. I'm just going to go ahead and hit play real quick. We'll kind of talk as things come up. Here we go, Pat. You got Watch Together on your screen, by the way? Oh, I heard it there. Oh. Yeah, you got it.
Oh, I do.
All right. So we got the classic Sega theme there. But anyway, the reason why I chose to do this was because I've become a part of the Unspoken Decade, a Facebook group, a website dedicated to 90s comics. And one of the guys on there, a guy by the name of Chris Armstrong, posted a pic of how 25 years ago in June 1993, the first wave of Ultraverse titles was hitting shelves. So I said, man, I got to do something. I'd love to do something to just kind of celebrate that actually happening, the 25th anniversary. So I said, I think there's an Ultraforce game out there. I start looking, and the only thing I could find is this Sega CD game.
I think it's the only
came out in 1994. Now here we have, as we're playing this, we have an interview with the creators.
And there have been concepts like that before. The old Captain Marvel concept originally was like that, except that in this case,
I think one's Len Straczewski. I can't remember the other guy's name, but either way,
call them knock off George Perez and knock off Rick Ocasek from the Cars.
Okay, so tell me about Ultraforce, man, or I should say Ultraverse. I'm saying Ultraforce because I have that on my mind here a lot lately. Tell me about your interaction either with Malibu Comics themselves, Ultraverse.
So I first was aware of Malibu mainly just from going to the comic shop and seeing these new titles on the shelves. Titles like Prime, like Ultraforce, all these new comics that were coming out, titles like Rune. And I didn't read them at the time, but I really kind of got interested when Ultraforce launched a cartoon show on the USA Network. So that was kind of my first real exposure to these characters. And unfortunately, I only saw about 2 episodes before they moved the time slot, and I could never find the show again, which was really common for USA Network in the 90s. They had a thing called Cartoon Express, and the shows were never given consistent times. So if you liked one and you saw it, consider yourself lucky. And this ranged from Ultraforce to Savage Dragon to Street Fighter, the animated series, to all kinds of stuff that aired on that channel. But I lost it at that point, and then I revisited it when I found out they were bought out by Marvel, and that they were going to kind of merge universes a little bit. I was like, oh, this could be cool. And they had an event with called God Wheel with Thor and Loki, and the Infinity Gems were involved. And so I kind of got into it there. I never really got into the Ultra Force characters themselves, but I did read a title called Nightman. He got actually his own syndicated live-action show at the tail end of the 90s, which was cool.
Give us your best description of Nightman, because I saw him in one episode here. I've seen comic covers with him. Can't say I've read anything with him in it, but give us an idea who Nightman is.
He's kind of like a supernatural mixture of Iron Man and Batman, where he has a suit of armor that he wears that's high-tech, but through this accident, he's basically been given sort of precognitive abilities, and as a result, he doesn't sleep. So because he doesn't sleep, he's always active at night as the Nightman, not to be confused with the It's Always Sunny Nightman.
I will tell you, the episode I watched with Nightman in it, he's a saxophone player as well.
He is.
Like a jazz artist of some sort.
He is. That's his day job. He is a jazz musician named Johnny Domingo.
That's right. So here, I just want to quickly point out that they did something really neat with this CD, and they put the first 12 issues of Prime are on there in digital form. However, they look like complete crap. So they had to, I think from what I read, the Sega CD could only process like 64 bits of color at a time on the screen. So here we are getting into gameplay. But yeah, so when you looked at like what the comic, when you opened up the comic and read the comic, you could read and see all the action, exactly what was going on in the comic that you would buy off the shelves. And I don't know if, I'm sure that other products have done that, but would be remiss to tell you which ones have, where they put comics on there along with the video game. So that's pretty inventive.
What's immediately jumping out to me here is as he punches people, there is blood splattering out of them.
Now that's Sega right there for you. Back in the 90s.
It's very, like Streets of Rage off the bat. This is classic side-scroller beat-em-up.
Mm-hmm. The Sega CD, which, just real quick, did you ever have much of a chance to play the Sega CD when you was a kid?
Not a lot. My cousin Michael had a Sega CD, and that was about the only time I ever really got to mess around with it.
Mm-hmm. Well, there was a definite markup in the music compared to what you would hear on a cartridge, because this was CD audio, and I don't know if you can hear it over us talking, but I mean, the soundtrack to this game, when it comes to game soundtracks, it's pretty spectacular. Everything sounds very clear. Now, when it comes to the sound effects of it, I'll just say we're 6 minutes into this review, and at 26 minutes, you're about to, say, okay, mute the damn thing, because it's saying smack, 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 smack. That's one of the standout parts of this game, is the fact that the soundtrack is very, very, very nice. It sounds very clear, very well produced.
That was pretty cool. I just saw him grab two enemies at the same time and slam them together. That's not your standard maneuver there to beat them up.
You said Streets of Rage. I definitely feel what you're saying here. I mean, that. What was the other one? Final Fight?
Oh, Final Fight. Yeah, another classic.
I don't recognize a whole lot of these enemies that he's fighting. I can tell you, I read the first 3 issues of Prime today, just to kind of like, maybe I can recognize some people that are going to show up.
Well, he's fighting the lizard people from the Savage Land in the X-Men video game.
Okay. Well, it's funny because we'll be visiting the Savage Land here in a few. We got to have our varied levels as we go along. And it almost sounds like we're about to get Rastafarian here with the music. Down to Jamaica, man.
I don't know why aliens have the sewers as their base of operations, but I suppose it would be just as good as anywhere.
Very common. Well, let's talk about the character Prime. I mean, do you know much about Prime? Did you ever read anything with him in it, or?
I'm gonna be very blunt in my understanding of Prime, which isn't super detailed, but I remember a good fair amount of it. Prime, to me, was always kind of a 90s Captain Marvel knockoff. Mm-hmm. I don't mean Marvel Captain Marvel, I mean Shazam Billy Batson. In that Prime is actually a 13-year-old kid. What happens is he's able to basically cover himself in this primordial ooze, as it were, and create this body of a superhero that takes the name Prime. He doesn't have any discernible weaknesses other than being, an emotionally and intellectually a 13-year-old, and that if he doesn't leave the form of Prime within a certain amount of time,
Prime time.
Yeah, get it? This primordial ooze form on the outside of him will harden and he will suffocate to death.
Yeah, there's been plenty of times where in the episodes that I watched of Ultraverse, you know, they were just about ready to, he was just about ready to get involved with some kind of big, you know, big bad or whatever, and then all of a sudden the ooze in the cartoon, the ooze would just kind of ooze off of him and he transforms back into the kid, and he just doesn't, you know, he has no like you said, there's a certain amount of time, so I don't think he can do it again, although they really don't clarify that. It's not like, I think there might be a couple times where he's turned into Prime, turned back into the kid because Prime time had wore off, then he's like, he wills it up again. So as for the laws and physics of Prime time, sir, I'm at a loss. But so okay, it's pretty standard fare on this on this beat 'em up. I mean, punch kick.
You know, it's looking pretty reminiscent of, in certain instances, like right now, the way the game is looking and the movements and the graphics. Did you ever play on Genesis or Super Nintendo the Death and Return of Superman?
I think I may have played that once. It's been a while. Is it similar to this?
It's looking real similar, particularly when he throws enemies into the far wall against the screen. Or, excuse me, not against the screen, but opposite the screen.
Okay.
That's a move that Superman does in that game. The graphics are very similar, and the movements are very similar to that game, and it looks like we got our first big bad here.
Yeah, this is Organism 8, I believe. This guy actually showed up in the first issue of the comic. There's a doctor by the name of Dr. Gross, which I don't know if he's named in here, but I'm fairly certain that I know Organism 8 is definitely associated with him, so I assume he's one of the main players. Prime has defeated Organism 8, but Kelly is missing. Kelly! This warehouse belongs to Ultratech. They must have her. Okay. So Ultratech is like, man, I'm trying to think of a good Marvel DC. What's a bad company in DC or Marvel? Like the
LexCorp.
LexCorp. Okay, there you go. Perfect example. That is a great allegory for what we have here.
I was gonna say, after that, can we talk about Kelly?
Oh yeah, sure. She's obviously at issue 1. Kelly is it's not his girlfriend as far as I know at the time that I'm reading anyway. He's very, you know, it's kind of like his teenage love interest.
Okay, so, and they Josh Whedon kind of stole this a little bit in Astonishing X-Men later on, and Chris Claremont kind of originated it in his X-Men run with Kitty Pryde and Colossus. Because Prime takes on the appearance of somebody, you know, who is very clearly an adult and has a girlfriend who is a 13-year-old girl, this raised some issues.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was at the end of issue 2 where Kelly is obviously very, you know, she's almost smitten with Prime, has no idea that it's Billy. I call him Billy, so see, that's a slip. Has no idea that's Kevin Green, and that her friend Kevin Green. So as Prime makes he makes a specific attempt to go and like save her again, and kind of like Kevin wants to show off what he can do. He ends up picking her up, takes her for like a flight around a city, and sets her back down. And her friend's like, he's like, he goes, "What, does Prime like you or something?" And she goes, "Well, yeah, I think he likes me." And then she goes, "Does he like you?" And she's like, "Yeah, I think he does." She goes, "Isn't he like 25?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's very weird." So it's definitely touched on in the comic for sure.
That's something obviously we were never going to see done with, Captain Marvel. But part of what these independent comics were all about at the time. It was touching stuff with their characters that you couldn't necessarily do in good taste with established characters, and that's one of the things they did here with Prime, who's kind of a Captain Marvel ripoff in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And these bad guys he's fighting look a lot like Hardcase. Another Ultraverse superhero.
Prototype, I think, is who you're thinking of.
Oh, no, Prototype. You're right.
Yeah. Prototype's the guy, my 4-year-old son said, he's like Iron Man. I was like, you're not too far off there, sir. He's got the powered-up suit. Granted, he doesn't own the suit. Ultratech owns the suit. But yeah. They look like palette swap prototypes here. That's pretty much what we're getting. For some reason, I saw one of the reviews of this game said that you could pick different characters, but every picture I saw had Prime, and I don't know if that's something that you can actually do, is play as a different character. So I would say that review's most likely wrong. But if you can pick somebody else, I can tell you who doesn't show up in here, and that I don't think Hardcase does show up in here. He's the blonde dude with, and I think he's like an actor or something. He's kind of like the hardened guy who's been on super teams before and kind of the heart and soul of Ultra Force, I guess you would say.
What we see here is Prime just going to town on all these prototype lookalikes and palette swaps between red and blue. For a superhero game, Prime's attacks have been pretty much limited to punch and kick. And that's kind of fair because in the comics, he really was a just kind of super strong flying guy, but there's not really much variation to his attacks. He has maybe 2 or 3 slam attacks and basically just punch and kick combos. And the ability to throw something, as you see him spike guys down on their head. He has a 3-punch combination. He can mix in a kick every so often. But, again, that's kind of what we're limited to. And you gotta remember it's 94. There's not... And, wow, this is a new villain we're seeing at the big bad level.
Well, here we go. This is Prototype. Prototype is, I didn't know it was him at first until after when we hit the cutscene here. He walked, so
he's literally walked through the 2 big bads easier than any of the, middling help they have.
Yeah. And just speaking of walking, he straight up just walked into Ultratech, through the lobby. That was one of the stages, Ultratech lobby. And he just kind of walks his way up through Ultratech to get the Prototype. So Prototype, that cutscene there, I think he says something about how Kelly's been abducted and she's in a van. So that's the whole point of this game, is Prime's got to find Kelly. Why does Ultratech have Kelly? We have no idea.
And this scene is pretty much ripped straight from a lot of 90s superhero games.
Oh, the flying scene.
This is in Captain America and the Avengers, when if you are Iron Man or Vision, whether you're in the air or underwater, you basically fly and shoot your repulsor or your sunbeam. If you're Cap or Hawkeye, you ride a sky cycle and shoot your arrows or shield. The Death of Superman has the same level, so not a lot of variation on that or anything to set it apart at the moment, other than just a lot of blood spattering.
It was at this point where I thought this game was going to kind of jump the shark. As he flies into this truck, I was like, is this going to be
a truck?
Yeah, well, here I thought he was just going to continue to walk and walk and walk. And the developers, thank goodness, had sense enough to be like, okay, we got to keep it on this one screen and just teleport the enemies in. So that was at least a little bit of a saving grace for him, because if he just continued to walk like the end of this semi truck for 5 or 6 screens, I was like, bull crap, no way. But yeah, this is kind of all we're going to get in this. It's just whack, smack, whack, smack, whack, smack. Now, there is apparently a couple special moves that he can do. We've seen the whole head bonk thing where he grabs 2 of them. I've actually seen gameplay where he'll grab one, walk over and grab another, and and bring both of them together. But there's also like this kind of like starburst thing that he can do, that's
where he tastes the flavor.
No, he like flies into the air and kind of explodes, and he can like kill enemies that way. You don't see that too often throughout this gameplay, though. Yeah, it looks like the truck's crashed, and we're still beating up pallet swap prototypes. Good golly.
They really went to town on making as many of these guys show up as possible. Now, he's getting what look like little power-ups along the way here that are different letters, and I'm assuming they spell out Prime?
No, up there at the top right, you'll see bonus and extra.
Oh, okay.
So extra, I think this is... Crap. This is not Organism 8. This is one of Dr. Gross's, like, second-hand guys. Go ahead.
He kind of did the same transformation almost as Prime would do, where he surrounds himself with this ooze and then takes it on a bestial form, as it were.
Yep.
And just like the other big bads, he's getting handled fairly easily.
Yeah, Prime's taking care of business here. Yeah, this guy, I cannot remember his name for the life of me, but yeah, he was developed by Dr. Gross. Now, Dr. Gross, man, I've been reading all. Yeah, see there, he turns into that dude. I've been reading up on Prime's origin a little bit. Now, Prime's mom went to Dr. Gross for some type of like fertility treatment. But of course, Dr. Gross had different plans, and he started experimenting on what he could do. When the kid was born, everything was normal at first. Then he developed, I think, and obviously when he turned 13, he developed this stuff that would kind of shoot from his chest, being that green goo, and then turn into Prime. There's other experiments that have run around from Dr. Gross, such as the guy we just saw, which his name just popped up on the screen. Totally didn't see it. Totally didn't. Oh, here, yeah, that guy looks cute. And Organism 8. But I have no idea where we're at now. I have not seen these guys in either the Ultra Force cartoon or the Prime comic.
This is like straight out of Warner Brothers. Like,
those villains are a little messed up.
They are living bomb. Well, I can't call them living bomb bursts because that would be Blastar. But
yes, sir. You can't be doing that. Gavin's favorite Ultraverse characters is Lord Pumpkin, who actually showed up in the Ultra Force cartoon as well. I don't know if you know much about Lord Pumpkin, but he is, I assume, a villain, at least in the comics, if it matches what happens in the cartoon. And now, these things look like something Lord Pumpkin would come up with.
Okay, now that's making sense to me. At least in the comic form, Lord Pumpkin was a very, very demented kind of creation, and definitely not kid-friendly if you read his origin, which is basically he was created by a sorcerer to be the kind of companion for this evil prince who had like early serial killer tendencies, like torturing and killing small animals and the like.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then Lord Pumpkin, who became a competent sorcerer of his own, just eventually got tired of this guy and killed him.
Oh, jeez.
And he mixes in with the God Wheel a little bit as well.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Yeah, but he's just a really, really powerful sorcerer and seemingly impervious to a lot of things other than if you get close to him, because his physical form is made up of kind of a scarecrow with a pumpkin head. Yeah,
he's definitely one of the more odd-looking supervillains coming out of the Ultraverse.
They went dark in the Ultraverse, kind of, between him and Rune. Rune was pretty dark, too.
Yeah, I've never read anything with him in it, but he does show up in the cartoon, and he was...
I'm sure it's a very sanitized version of it.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It's got to be more sanitized. You got to... People who are listening to this, if you guys didn't experience 90s comic books, they had to be extreme. Not as... Image would take it to a certain level of blood and guts, and the Ultraverse comics were not too... They didn't too much shy away from it. It wasn't as over the top as Image could be. I mean, in the first issue of Prime, Prime is confronting this confronting a gym teacher who is pretty much a sexual predator amongst these girls, and actually like grabs one of their butts. But anyway, Prime grabs a hold of him and breaks and snaps his arm. And I mean, you could see like the bone sticking out of his arm. There's blood going everywhere. So it's definitely extreme. That's probably the best word I could use for it. I mean, that's the 90s word I could use for it. Extreme. Here we have another flying level. We're going to kind of mix it up a little bit. I mean, Pat, so far, what do you think of this game, man?
I think if I was a kid, I would be okay with playing this once and kind of being done with it. Only because I know 90s games suffer from repetition as a problem. Like, but this is just really repetitive.
That's one of the first things I noticed, too.
We usually only get one, fly through or swim through level like this, and now we're already at 2.
I watched some guys play Maximum Carnage. I think it was Friday. I was sitting there comparing that to this. Maximum Carnage, it's a decent game made by LJN, and LJN is known
horrible.
They're known for making some shit games.
How terrible is that LJN just made the worst friggin' games, and they had the licenses to Marvel and the World Wrestling Federation.
Sad.
We got so gypped as kids.
We did, dude. We really did.
Like, from Silver Surfer and the Wolverine NES game to, like, Steel Cage Challenge and Wrestle, like, just crap. Just repugnant crap.
I remember playing one of my first wrestling games for the Genesis. And that was, thank goodness, that was Royal Rumble.
Oh, dang, where they finally started to turn a corner.
Yeah, and I was like, okay, here we go. I can play WWF Royal Rumble all day long with my buddy. 2-player was a lot of fun. But they have a litany of games under their name that are just complete and utter crap. Now this is a villain that I don't. He definitely, as far as I know, did not show up in the cartoon. So
he was hiding behind the palm tree, so I couldn't get a look at him.
I don't know what this guy's name is, but it'll pop up here in a few minutes.
He's a 90s Malibu Comics villain. He's got a square top haircut there and looks to be some type of armor on the side. We're going to call him Edge.
Edge!
Because 90s villains needed to have Edge. And he looks to have a spinning attack that maybe cuts. So we're going to call him Cutting Edge.
Cutting Edge! Brilliant. That's brilliant. That is a 90s name if I ever heard one. Here we go. Let's see what his name is.
Brings me back to my attempts at creating a character in the 90s.
Wrath. the other half of the tag team. Oh, Chronic, that's right.
Not to be confused with Brian Clark, excuse me. Not to be confused with Adam Bomb, also a great 90s bad guy name if you need one. And we've got the Savage Land.
I told you, bro. Here we go.
Oh, my goodness. And there are Amazons here.
Yeah, we are throwing it all at Prime. Prime is an unstoppable force.
I almost feel like there should have been a timer in this game to maybe, like, make you have some kind of incentive to do things faster so that you wouldn't turn into the suffocated Kevin.
Mm-hmm. Smack, 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 smack. So he's... I don't know what we're doing in the jungle. That's the thing. I need to follow the story a little bit.
We've gone from, the alleyway and the sewer in the city at a subway station to now we're in this satanic greenhouse jungle filled with Amazons and now bodybuilders.
They're just throwing everything at him.
And we've got the appearance
Magilla Gorilla.
and we've got the appearance of a cast member from Rampage.
Oh my goodness.
Make this game a real classic, while in the back, Audrey from Little Shop of Horrors cheers on.
Absolutely. The gameplay compared to like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It's,
it's just not good.
Yeah, it's average. Average is probably the word I would use. You can only get so far. The only thing that's really driving you now is the fact that you can beat this game and you want to see what happens at the end. The bosses, now he could have put a cheat code in here, I don't know. But the bosses were definitely, I haven't seen this guy die once. Not one time.
I haven't seen the bosses do any damage.
Yeah, he's kicking them all over the place.
And now we're just beating up Donkey Kong as he jumps down on the bridge. Kong after Kong. I don't know if this was just really rushed and they had a goal that they wanted to get this out by a certain point in time, but there's definitely a lack of development here.
If you look at some of the stuff that's out there online, apparently this game got packaged along with another game because at one point they were going to release it by itself. All the advertisements you see for this Sega CD game, there you go. That's what I was talking about.
There we go, Clash.
Yeah, they were going to sell it along, or sell it all by itself. But I think as the demand for the Sega CD went down. This is 1994, and I think the Sega CD has had, I don't know, 2 or 3 years in existence now, and it's just kind of waning down.
Proto Man. In a trench coat to make it 90s. It
wasn't going to sell a whole lot, and I think definitely they knew that the gameplay here was kind of subpar, so they were just like, okay, we're going to throw it in along with. Man, I wish I could remember the other name of that game. Like, it started with an M, if I remember right.
Was it another superhero game, or was it
no?
Unrelated?
Here's the thing: I didn't recognize the title. I want to take a look here and see what it's called. If you're a villain, you're obviously going to put your headquarters at the bottom of a volcano.
I mean, it's just logic.
It's logic. All right, here we go. The name Microcosm. So, yeah.
That easily could have been something that was a comic, but I'm going to say no.
The cover of it looks like a dude getting ready to fly into inner space. How about that? That's what it reminds me of. Inner Space.
Inner Space was released 31 years ago today.
No kidding.
Starring Dennis Quaid, Martin Short, and Meg Ryan.
Such a good movie. I love that movie.
Also released today, Adventures in Babysitting, 31 years ago today.
Oh, both at the same theater, huh?
Same theater, same day.
Oh, nice. Well, then I would be, I'd feel left out if I didn't say Back to the Future got dropped 1985, so that would have been 33 years ago today. One of my favorite movies of all time. But in 1994, we had the Prime Sega CD to look forward to.
And he is fighting what appear to be skinny versions of Toe Jam from Toe Jam and Earl after they are doctors that transform into them. And then grow plant limbs. I
don't know if that was Dr. Gross or not, but yeah, Earthworm Jim's the first thing I thought of. I don't know if you remember that game or not.
Oh, certainly do. And more little bomb bursts here.
These guys would be great.
I can't tell if they're chubby or jacked.
They're wearing a cape, I think. They're straight up WWE material. They got a cape.
You know how little people, you can't always tell if it's that they have cuts or they're just chubby.
That's our bomb burst for you.
Yeah, that's kind of it. And we've got a lot of Earthworm Jim happening here.
These are some unfortunate souls. I don't know if they're all the same doctor or not.
They're dropping the clipboards and they're just disappearing. But they maintain their glasses when they transform.
One of the weirdest things I've noticed with Prime is that when Kevin transforms, the cape is part of his body. That is not a cape. It is part of his body. There's a point where in the comic it gets ripped off and he's bleeding from the cape. That's
He's bleeding from the cape.
Well, I would say that he's gooing from the gate, because anytime he gets injured as Prime, it's goo. It's not blood, it's goo.
It's goo.
Yes, sir. Does that make it better? I don't know if it makes it better or not.
And that's part of the Prime character, is that the look of him is basically from Kevin's combination of his subconscious and his imagination, because the face of Prime looks exactly like Kevin's father.
Oh, really? I did not know that. Okay. I do remember them saying stuff about here we're at the last stage, by the way. I think this is the final stage. But yeah, I remember them saying that his transformations were affected that way, but I did not know that was his dad's face. That's pretty cool. I did see where
it's reinforcing some positives of, hey, my dad's my hero.
Yep.
Not everything has to be super edgy.
That's right. I did see where he has like different transformations, which occurred in the cartoon. He turned into a guy by the name of Rogue Prime, and then did he die? No, he didn't. He just got knocked down. He turned into a guy called Rogue Prime, and he also turned into something called Space Prime in the show, which were all different transformations that he willed in order to adapt to his surroundings. Like Space Prime, so he could go flying out in space, believe it or not. Rogue Prime was, I don't know, he was just like this super badass version of Prime.
Jesse, are you aware of Spider Prime?
As a matter of fact, I saw that on the wiki, sir. Spider Prime. What'd you think of Black September? Did you think that fell flat?
Yes, I do. Basically, and I'll make a wrestling comparison. Take a drink, everybody. When the WWF started a working relationship with the USWA, they didn't immediately send Bret and Owen Hart down there and Shawn Michaels. They sent Koko Beware and Tatanka and Papa Shango. And that's kind of what Marvel did when they sent the Black Knight over to lead Ultraverse. And they would drop a name here or there, or have a bad guy show up to create machinations, but never actually interact with a hero in the case of Loki.
That's sad. And, this was an okay comic property. I mean, this was something that I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to, because I was
and we just survived the attack of the 50-foot woman, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, this is the end, by the way. Prime, you've rescued me. The doctor's evil experiments have failed. I feel almost normal now. Thank you. We're done, dude. Kelly has been rescued.
This is not good.
There's not too much of a story here. This isn't
not a story.
This isn't, Krang has, stolen the Statue of Liberty. Now let's go get Shredder. And we all know everything about it. It's just, there was nothing to keep you completely interested in this. And sometimes it got a little monotonous.
So it get monotonous after, level 1.
Dude, this is supposed to be based on a comic book. You want to bring that comic book feel to it. And just because you got a comic book character in here, it's not going to do it. So,
listen, I get why we couldn't have, a Green Lantern or a Doctor Strange game in the 90s, because that's a little hard to do.
It's tough, yeah.
And, as far as a character on that level, we had the Silver Surfer game, but everybody knows that game is impossible to beat and was never designed to be beat, and there's really not even an ending to it, to my understanding. Yeah. It's an urban legend that anyone has ever seen the final boss of that game. But, this game, like we were talking about before, I said I really feel like it was just rushed to get out there and maybe just try to increase the brand awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Especially since, Marvel acquired it so quick, and Marvel wasn't exactly rolling in the cash at this point in time.
Yeah.
They would declare bankruptcy, 2 years after they claimed Malibu? Yeah, so I get the idea behind this, but it feels like you're playing an unfinished game that they just patched cutscenes into after it was done to try to loosely make sense of it.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me, but
I don't know if there was ever a firearm in the Strangers game. I would assume that they were going to put that out there in development at some time, but clearly, as far as I know, we don't get that. I know the Strangers are definitely some characters that show up in the cartoon. Firearm must be a Malibu property. I don't know anything about them.
Yeah, that makes two of us.
So I just want to give a shout out to the. Are they going to play it here? I don't know if they do or not. But there is a 7-minute long title song. It's a prog rock song, and it is all about Prime. And this guy put it together. Just let it loose on this Sega CD. You can listen to the whole thing. Actually, I did listen to the whole thing, and it is a 90s absurd, sir. Absurd. And here, actually, as a matter of fact, let's see if I can find the lyrics, because as it's going on, Prime, Sega, CD, song, lyrics.
Yeah, please read some of the poetry from this. What are the odds this was a fan contest, like in the back of Malibu Comics issues, where like, hey, write in your lyrics for a song and you could be featured in this?
Oh, I don't think they have them on here. I know it's like over and over. He's like, he's talking about Prime going to take him, make him seek justice, some other bullshit. I can't remember exactly
Do they
how it
rhyme
goes.
Prime with time?
Probably.
Do they rhyme Prime with lime or prime?
Lime's pushing it, sir.
Does he eat it in a box? Does he eat it with a fox?
Prime. I'm going to turn this up just a little bit, see if I can.
Yeah, blast it. We're going to turn it up here, folks.
Oh, yes. I can do that.
Taking out the garbage, breaking up his foes. He's a lawmaker doing what he knows. Action, dealing out the pain. Pumping up, thumping up, filter, filter, hey.
Oh my goodness.
He's going to get himself some justice.
He's going to get himself some justice. This is what happens if you have like people who write cartoon show theme songs and like, yeah, do that but sound like Dream Theater. And in the worst way possible. That would be great. Like, literally, that might be worse than the Wildcats cartoon theme song.
Dude, this is pushing it, and it almost is like
this is the Girls in Cars of superhero action theme songs.
It's like some Uriah Heep in here. Hit it! Play that guitar. Make it sing.
My goodness, who thought this was a good idea? Who thought any of this was a good idea?
Malibu Interactive. I mean, I don't know if there's much else to say here other than, just, ladies and gentlemen, if you haven't had the opportunity to play the Ultraverse Prime Sega CD,
I say don't do it. Don't do it unless you really just have some sort of insomnia. Mm-hmm. Or if you know what, if you have OCD, this is the game for you, because you have to finish what you start, and that's literally the only way you could convince me to finish this. We did, were this not an experiment that we were doing to have some fun with and comment over, I don't know that I would have lasted through this whole thing, because this was bad. I mean, I really wanted to see, an alternative property from this time other than Spawn, in the video game medium, but this wasn't it.
No. There could have been so much more done with this to make it more interesting.
If you grew up playing video games in the 90s, you understand all about how monotonous they could be. If you ever played the Tick video game, which I'm sure somebody listening to this is familiar with it wasn't exactly a variety of fun. You had very limited actions. You had a real limited amount of enemies. A lot of them were palette swaps, and the boss characters weren't exactly difficult. But this just made that seem like something we would be playing on PS4 or Xbox One. this was rushed, clearly. There was not a lot of thought put behind it. I think this was maybe a last gasp effort from Malibu before they sold their property to maybe try to get more well-known and get buzz around what they assumed to be their primary character in Prime, who was going to be their face of the company going forward. And it was just a total backfire on every level. It was just really not well thought out, not well put together. I literally remember nothing of this game getting any hype whatsoever. So if I remember
Prime for action. Prime for action. Yes, he is.
God, it's just terrible, Jesse.
I want to first off thank you for coming on and spending, near an hour with me watching some video games and talking about some of our favorite moments and talking about some of the not so good moments in Prime. Unfortunately, just like Pat said, save yourself some time, watch a gameplay of it. The fact is, I don't know if I've ever heard of the game, so it may be rare, it may not be. But I'll tell you right now, if you're buying the game for collectability purposes, great. But if you're buying the game to play it,
I have a bridge to sell you.
So, Pat, man, why don't you go ahead and plug some stuff? I'll plug some stuff. We'll get out of here.
You can listen to a recent tribute show that Mark Radulich and I did here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network as a special TV party tribute to the late Big Van Vader, Leon White, who we just lost last week. One of the great big men of all time. Real shame that he is gone. But Mark and I had a blast reminiscing over my favorite monster of all time and just the high points of his career, what drew me to Vader, what drew Mark to Vader, why we loved him. So you can go ahead and listen to that here on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. I have not been a part of the last two episodes of the 411 Ground and Pound radio show, but Robert always does a tremendous job on that show, especially his last episode, which is a preview of this weekend's UFC card coming up on Saturday, the 7th. It's a real... I believe it's the 7th anyway. But it's a real treat to hear him talk about it and preview that card. I highly recommend it. I was on an episode of the Metal Hammer of Doom with Mark and Jesse where we talked Lordy and Sexorcism and one of the most fun albums of the year. I was on an episode of Source Material again with Mark and Jesse just recently where we talked about one of the great storylines of Fantastic Four history, The Trial of Galactus. I had a blast doing it. I'll be on an upcoming Source Material with Jesse in the coming months to discuss Thor the Reigning, one of, if not my favorite Thor storyline, one of the top 3 in my opinion. And I'm a Thor guy, so you can tell it means something when I say that. Other than that, some things in the works with Casual Heroes. Gavin and Chris have already put some stuff up. Gavin's Gavin, Chris is Chris. You know what you're getting with them, whether you like it or not. Be on the lookout for Frank Vogel on Twitter. If you don't get it, go watch the shows. Other than that, man, I'm just enjoying myself and having a good time and trying to support all the great shows here, like Source Material, like the stuff we hear on the Streaming Boy podcast. Jesse does a great job here. We love listening to him. And that's all I got for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, go give the Radulich in Broadcasting Network Facebook page a like to stay up on top of all the great podcasts that we have to offer. Most of just about everything is posted there. So you can stay up on top of it. If there's something you like to look at, you could go right there, click the link, listen to it. Me and Mark are in the process of getting ready for tomorrow, 4th of July. We are going to be reviewing Sweet Southern Sugar by Kid Rock. Came out last year. This is one of Mark's idea of celebrating July 4th. And I'll tell you, the album ain't too bad. It's actually pretty decent. But if you have a chance to check out our Metal Hammer of Doom extras, we have hopped back in the time machine. It did some video commentaries on Ba with the Ba, American Badass, and one off the new album called Greatest Show on Earth. So we kind of took a look at 3 Kid Rock videos, and they're actually on the Source Material YouTube page. You can check those out. That's it. That's Pat Mullin. I'm Jesse Starcher. We're ready to get out of here. Thanks for joining us. Have a good one. Bye.